okay? And they're able to manage their weight much better by sticking to this principle than when they actually overindulge. As a matter of fact, do you know that even if you're eating the very best food, if you overindulge, guess what happens? That food ferments in the stomach and you get no medicinal values from it because the food's spoiled. So you might have gone out and bought the very best food, but because of your wrong habits of eating and drinking, you destroy the body's ability to take from it. Are we making sense, dear? Yes, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw a few hands up here first. Errol, I had you first. No. Several different times. Maybe they'll do one today. They might have done one another week ago, another one at different random times, Errol. And if the numbers keep coming back the same way, then they can come to the conclusion that you're diabetic. No, okay, good point. Errol is asking, how is one diagnosed with diabetes? And I mentioned is that a series of tests where that person comes back consistently above 126. Let me explain to what I mean by a series of tests. They're only going to be doing blood sugar tests, amen? So it's not like they're going to do about 8 or different types of blood sugar tests. It's one type of test they're going to basically do, but they're going to do it at different times. Maybe they'll do one today, they'll do one next week, or 2 next week. And if they found that the person is consistently coming back with an elevated blood sugar level, they can walk away with the conclusion that that person has elevated glucose level and is very likely a diabetic individual. Does that make sense, Errol? Sister Simone.
My question is, there are some people who are very thin, skinny people, and they walk away with the fact that they are thin and they have no weight whatsoever, or they're not obese or fat then. But in actuality, skin person can be, their BMI then they can be fat and thin. And you go onto the scale and you think that, oh, 120 or 126. But in actuality, their BMI could be very, they could be obese. Their body fat percentage could be,
Okay. What Simone mentioned, she mentioned that a lot of times because someone is slender, they may walk away with the idea that they're possibly healthy. And because someone is slender does not necessarily mean that they are healthy or they have the proper body fat percentage. And what she said is correct, because here's what happened. Not everybody is slim because they are healthy. Some people are slim because they are malnourished. Am I making sense there? People who are undernourished will be slimmer. So if you have wrong conditions of eating, you'll find that malnourishment will come along with that. So not because you are slim means that you're healthy. Amen? But if you go back and look historically now, I guarantee you'll never see an obese individual make it to 100. Am I making sense? It's normally a slender person that makes it to 100. Okay? However, not all slender individuals are healthy. Okay? And what they are finding now, they are finding based on research, they found that I think it's the Sardinians, even though they were slightly heavier than some other groups, than the Okinawans, they actually had less heart attacks than the Okinawans. And when they stopped to figure out how could that happen? Because they found that the Sardinians incorporated a lot of olives in their diet. And olives have an antioxidant in it that neutralizes carcinogens in terms of the arterial wall and deactivate arterial plaques. So as a result, the Sardinians, even though they carried a little bit more weight, they had better blood flow, and on top of that too, the arterial wall was in a much better condition. Amen? So does it make sense so far in terms of what we're saying about diabetes? So what causes diabetes? Right. A 65% fat in the diet, as well as what? Fat on the body. Okay? How does fat specifically causes diabetes? We know what the fat actually does is that it actually seals up the insulin receptors on the cell. Okay? On the cell, they have something called what? Insulin receptors. And the fat actually seals up the insulin receptors. Does it seal every insulin receptor up? Absolutely not. Because there's so many on the cells. But there's a good amount of the receptors that have been sealed, and it makes it more difficult for the insulin to take the glucose into the cells. Does that make sense? And we are aware of the three classic symptoms of diabetes. And the three classic symptoms of diabetes are polyuria, polydipsia, and polyphagia. And basically what that means is that you have polyuria. What does urea sounds like? Urine. So it's going to be excessive urination, or you can say frequency in urination. Then you have polydipsia. Okay? What does that fall in the category of, dear? Okay? You hit it right on the head. Excessive thirst. And then you have something called polyphagia, which has to do with what? Excessive appetite or excessive hunger. You know, that person feel the need that they have to consume large amount of food. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay? Let's continue here. We found, too, that 1 hour of consistent walking is equivalent to how many units of insulin? 20 units of insulin. In a book called Counsels on Health, page 200, here's what it says, which is real nice. It says, walking is the best form of exercise for diseased bodies. Why? Because all of the organs of the body are involved in this exercise. When you run, when individuals try to run, what does the body do? The body predominantly burns something called glycogen, which is sugar, and very little fat. Does it burn fat when you run? Of course it does, but very little. But when you walk, here's what the researcher found, that the body actually burns half fat and half sugar. Did you hear that? When you walk, what does the body burn? Half fat and half sugar. And what is the problem we're having with diabetes? A fat issue. A fat issue. That's one of the problems. Okay? And because of that, you'll find that walking tends to be more effective when dealing with such things as diabetes as well as other heart diseases. Another thing about walking, which is real nice, it doesn't overshoot. Like, for example, when dealing with things like osteoporosis, they found that when the feet hit that ground, it triggers calcium absorption. When the feet hits the ground, it triggers calcium absorption, which is real nice. When you run, it does the same thing, but running tends to overexert the body in a situation like that. Okay? You want something that's going to be a little bit more gentle on the body, but not too gentle. They have to be impact with minimal force. Runners, not runners, swimmers, there's virtually no impact with swimming. And as a result, here's what they found. They found that swimmers actually have the weakest bones, because there's no impact when dealing with swimmers. There's absolutely no impact. Does that make sense? Okay, good. You remember the formula that we used earlier on as we were teaching all the way along, like yesterday when we were talking about how to study diseases, how to set the format up? and we talk about turning off the faucet, unplugging the sink, and mopping it up. You guys remember that? Well, now let's apply that format a little to dealing with diabetes. I want to read an article, and then I want to make a statement. Let me read the article first, and then I'll make the statement after. Okay, listen to this. First, let's read this sentence first, then we'll make a statement. It says here that animal products, and for people from the islands, when we say animal, that includes flesh. Amen? You know, as I shared with you guys in the past, I remember I was in one of the islands, and I asked the individuals, hey, does anyone eat any animal products here? Nobody raised their hand. And I'm like, man, I know who you guys are because I'm from the same place. I know you guys be eating chicken and fish and turkey. They says, yeah, we do eat that, but that's flesh. So I just want to let you know that as you're teaching in the different venues, be aware of culture. Okay, be aware of culture in your teaching, because culture will affect one's understanding. If you don't believe that culture affects one's understanding, let me give you a perfect example. Remember I told you guys that I grew up in Antigua? In Antigua, we call banana fig. Okay? When I came here to the States and they were talking about Turkish fig, and I saw these little thing and they call this fig, I said, those ain't no fig. You know what I mean? I don't know what those are, but they sure ain't fig. Fig are nice and long. Are you guys following me? That just, it lets you know a lot of the time people interpret things through their cultural experience. And it's important for us to reach individuals within their culture and speak their languages as much as we can to reach them. Does that make sense, dear? So keep that in mind as you reach out to God's children. The next question I want to ask you is, can a total vegetarian, meaning can a vegan vegetarian actually have diabetes, get diabetes? How can they do it? By overindulgence in the fats and the oils. Overindulgence in the fats and the oil. If a diabetic is sitting down overindulging on the olive oil and the nuts, you know, sometimes we sit down to eat nuts, and how do many of us tend to eat nuts? We take the whole can, maybe, you know, put it between your leg, or you put it right on your desk, and you just sit there and you just pick at the can, pick at the can, pick at the can, and before you know it, you have eaten a whole can of nuts by the end of the day. Guess what? Do you know instruction has been given to us concerning nuts? Are nuts healthy to eat? Does nuts protect the heart from heart disease and so forth? Yeah. But when you overindulge even on the good things, it can actually have an adverse effect on the body. And listen what we're told here about nuts. I'm reading from the book Ministry of Healing, page 95, in my favorite book in my favorite book in reference to Ministry of Healing. You guys understand what I mean by that, right? There are several different types of ministry healing out there. Whichever one you have, don't read it. Make sure you get the one that says Pathways to Health and Happiness. You know why? Because many of you have had the book Ministry of Healing for years and have never read it. So obviously it is not effective. Come and get the one that I have called Pathways, and we'll read it anew. It says here, care should be taken, however, not to use too large a portion of nuts. You know, sometimes we see these little short statements by the Lord. Care should, and it's not like a forceful statement or like a heavy, it's just like you should be careful not to use too much nuts. And you know what's kind of funny? If you adhere to that precaution, nothing but blessings. It's just like the statement in Counsels and Diets and Food about olives. You want to hear what it says right here, page 359? Look at this. Just a casual statement. Listen to this. Nothing forceful. Olives may be so prepared as to be eaten with good results at every meal. Page 359. That's just a little casual statement. And we'll be sitting down